I've been fortunate to speak around the world live to over 65,000 people. And in those times, people would come up and say, "Oh, Steve, you're a born speaker. You're a born this." I was not. I was the worst. I could not even read in public as a kid. Could not read. Went through a number of embarrassing things. And even though I was a sports jock and played sport over lunchtime, I gave up and I joined the debating team and hung out with nerds. Sorry, anybody into debating, but for me, they were back then. A high school kid that's a sports jock going and joining the debating team. And I spent 2 years doing it because somewhere back then I knew I had to get this right. My life would not be the same if I couldn't speak in public. And then one thing led to another and I forced myself into situations to get better and get better.
Best-selling author on Amazon in marketing, sales, with over 20 years of experience in the video industry, which of course, with 20 years means the TV industry, having a show on Channel 9 and being executive producer for Warner Bros. That's going to be the guest I'm going to be interviewing. Just a quick bio of him, Steve, today at the Business Library. And just to take us off, start the podcast out, let's start at the beginning. Before the best-selling times, TV shows, what was your first business or hustle that got you into that taste of entrepreneurship? Just made you, this is the thing I want to do.
Look, it's great to be here and share some of these experiences with your people, but I've got to tell your audience right now that I actually got into business by accident. It was a pretty serious accident, but I was a professional track athlete. I was training for the Olympics and training too hard, and I, in an accident, crushed 3 discs in my back. And you'd probably know, as a professional sprinter, you don't run real fast with a bad back. So it was through rehab I actually fell in love with the health and fitness industry, and that was back in the very early 80s. And it was nothing but bodybuilding and body beautifuls, and I thought, I could do this differently. I could do it better. I was a pretty cocky, brash young kid back then. And so I set out to conquer the world in the health and fitness industry and open up a health club. We did things differently. We had programs for the seniors, the deconditioned, the overweight, the kids, rehabilitation. I thought, well, everybody else is trying to capture the 7 or 8% that want to go and do bodybuilding and body beautiful. And I'm going to go out there after the other 85. So that's what I did. And all the learnings that I got right back then, I'm taking into business right now. So that was my first foray into business. And it's interesting that I'm working with entrepreneurs, and it's so easy to start a business, have a crack and stop. Start a business, have a crack and stop. And they're worrying about investing, $500 or $1,000 into starting their business. We started the health club. We mortgaged my parents' home. My sister and I put in all of our savings. We invested $250,000 into starting the first crazy idea that we had for business, and interest rates were 17.8%. Now everybody's saying, interest rates are high and I've got to put $1,000 in to get my business off the ground. It's like, well, try it back then. And if it didn't work, we were all sleeping on the street. So that was the first jump into business, and it's certainly jumping into business a different way than it is today.
Well, it's definitely a more correct use of the word accident than I normally hear when people say I got into business by accident. That's more of a metaphor in most cases, but sometimes accidents are a blessing if you can view it in the right way, if you have the right mindset, I would say.
Well, absolutely. I look at everything and I look back on it, and I wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't have that accident. My times, I'd have probably got to the semifinals of the Olympics. I was pretty quick, but that was it. And there was no money back then. I would have ended up a broke athlete, nowhere to go. But as it is now, I'm blessed to be working around the world, sitting in my Zoom chair or my Riverside chair, as the case may be, and getting to do what I love to do every day. So yeah, it was an accident, but geez, I thank God every day that it actually did happen.
Yeah, I think that comes down to perspective in life, because there's nothing that's too bad that it isn't good for something else. You just got to view it in the right lens.
Yeah, and I know we're going on to different tracks today, and a lot of it is to do mindset and things like that. And I'm going to give you people one of the tips that I live by every day. And people say, Steve, you get up, you're every day, you're buzzed, you're looking forward to do things. First thing I do every morning, even early to do this interview with you, it was I do a quick check-in with my body. Yep, all good. I'm breathing. That's fine. It's a good start to the day. But then I find at least one thing that I'm excited about for that day before I get out of bed. My feet cannot hit the ground getting out of bed until I find something that I'm actually excited about the day for. Now, what a great way to get up every day excited about something.
Definitely something I'm going to start doing more of, because sometimes getting out of bed, oh, it's so nice, it's so cozy, it's a comfortable place to be. But going on more like to track a business after all this is business podcast, and you started multiple successful businesses, 6-7 figures. What is some of the common traits that you noticed that made all of those businesses be successful in different niches, different spaces?
It probably comes down to, and it took me a while to get into writing, and I hated writing. And you said, yeah, I've got a video and a TV background, and my philosophy is give me a camera, not a keyboard. I'd rather jump in a camera any day than sit down and write. But my first book was actually titled Stand Up, Stand Out, or Stand Aside. And for those of you who haven't worked out by now, yes, I am an Aussie with an Aussie accent and got an Aussie sense of humour. And I wanted to actually title the book Be Different or Bugger Off. But
I like the title. I do like that one.
Yeah, my wife is an Amazon guru at the time, and she said, no, you probably can't do that. But that's the truth, is particularly even more in this AI bot-generated world that can push a button, put out content, and make you look the same as everybody else. The interesting thing is the more you can be you, create your own language, your own isms, create new things that other people haven't heard of. Even if you do something similar, and actually even in that first book I wrote, you don't have to have spots in a herd of zebras to look different. They all look different. How do you stand out? So that was one of the first things I told you about the health club. It was different. We didn't have a mirror in the gym. It wasn't about the body beautiful, but we had an influx of people who said, finally, there's a place that we can go to. And pretty well all of my programs right now is what is it that people need and how can I service and communicate to them how I do it. And instead of going in and say, oh, what do I do? What do I like to do? And how can I really sell it? To me, it's always starting from what group of people that I can get in front of uniquely and as that group that I could add the most value to. And when you start with that in mind, and then how can I communicate it in a clear, concise, compelling way for them to say, wow, somebody who gets me, somebody who understands me, and they provide something for me. And that's been the philosophy for the last 40 odd years.
I think it's always important to make money in business, for sure. That's otherwise you don't have a business. If at that point it's a hobby, it's an interest, it's not really a business that gets defined by making that money. But you might have a successful business because the times are good. But I remember one of my dad's friends, I think he was a painter, something like that. But he was just painting like all the other painters. And as soon as the time changed back in 2008, business got very rough because people didn't spend a whole lot of money. The market got a lot more competitive because there was not that much demand anymore. And all the average people, they thought they have a successful business just because market was good. Bit of a problem all of a sudden. It was hard to generate money, but if you can make yourself stand out, so people want to work with you specifically because of you, that's very important, and also allows you to charge higher prices because you're not all of a sudden competing with everybody else as directly, what only thing that differs you in price. So I think that's a beautiful analogy. But also,
I'm going to jump in on that if you don't mind. I'm going to pull that apart.
Go ahead.
See, and this is what happens with most people. The painter was selling painting. He was an A. I am a painter. In those times, what is it that people might need and I can enhance the value of your house and protect it so that it's not going to fall apart and you don't have to spend more money on it. So that you're a valuation enhancement specialist and a house protection specialist. Now, I just made those up then, but then what's the difference between you and them? Well, I add value to your house. If you pay me this much, you're going to get X amount of value. If you need to sell it in tough times, you're going to get more money from it. And if you need to protect it so you don't have to renovate it, repair it, and it'll fall apart if you neglect it. So you're also selling the protection. So instead of selling painting, I paint houses, and then everybody knows a painter. Whereas you specifically say, well, I enhance the value of your property and protect it so you don't have to spend more money on it. Then it's like, wow, that's something that's different. It's like an insurance broker. And we help people go, this is a real good learning lesson for your audience. When you move from an A to a the, I am a good painter, a good coach, a good consultant, to the, and you own that space. One guy came to me and said, Steve, I go to my networking events and nobody, I get up and say what I do and nobody wants to talk to me. And I said, what do you do? He said, I'm an insurance broker. I said, well, that's easy. That's why nobody wants to talk to you. You're an insurance broker. He said, yeah, but a lot of people are underinsured. And when something happens, they lose everything. And I said, well, you're not an insurance broker. You're a lifestyle protection specialist. You help people protect their lifestyle, their assets, and their family and loved ones in the case of unforeseen circumstances. He said, oh my God, that's what I do. And so he get up and he said, I'm known as the lifestyle protection specialist, and I can help protect your A, B, C, D, E in the chance. He said, Steve, I now get 2 to 3 people coming up to me every time I say it. So instead of saying, hey, this is what I wanted, this is what I do, this is what I want to sell, come from the ears. And what is it that they really do need behind what they really do need? Because most people would say, well, I'll sell the benefits. It's a step past that. And that's where a lot of our people make massive growth by changing the language.
I'm actually going to write that down. I'm going to try that in some of our outreach campaigns. It's always a good reminder. I've heard it before, but I like the way you put it. That was very fast. You just came up with that out of nowhere. I was very impressed. Not so. I don't wonder as much as I did before of why you did a lot of successful businesses. It's almost more of the why than the how in some way.
Absolutely. And how do you stand out? Well, and particularly whether you're networking, referrals, we're going to talk about pod guesting a little bit later.
For sure.
When you are an A, I am a good podcast host. Everybody knows a good podcast host, but when you are I am the creator of this, and I do this, and I do this. We tell people when you move from an A to a your bank balance changes.
Yeah. You put it so neatly. Normally I have a little bit I can add on, but like, it's actually very well rounded. No wonder you make a lot of money from podcast guesting and you have a good strategy for it. I was like, there's no better way to see what it's actually about than inviting you on the business library to see what does it actually mean to be a podcast guest. This might be one of the episodes I send to people if they're like, what do you look for in a guest? Go check out this episode. Try to put your own spin on it. That's great. I have a few episodes like that depending on the person. This is definitely kind of one of them. I can feel it. But since you're so much into video, but you wrote 9 books, like what got into you? What made you, first of all, write one after all chose, now one is not enough, I want to do 8 more?
Yeah, well, my first book, and I've got to be honest, and it's actually quite good. She can actually hear this right now. Is I started writing my first book to avoid the bruising. My wife was coaching people to write books and become bestsellers, and she kept hitting me and say, Steve, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. So I started writing a book, and it was a real pain. And she said, did you follow my framework? And I said, no. So that copped some more bruising. And then she said, the thing that changed everything for me, she said, why don't you put videos in the book? I said, oh my God, what? She said, yeah, you can do this, 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 and this, and you can put videos in the book. And I thought, oh. So my first book was 12, 15 years ago, and it had 7 videos in it. So people could actually write my book. If they're sitting under a tree, they could scan the QR code and I could be talking to them out of the book. And that changed everything. And I could actually do things. And within my first book coming out, got bestseller within 24 hours, got bookings for speaking, high-level clients. And it's like, well, and then every time I needed to change direction or I had something different to say, then I would follow the same formula and I would, put out a book. So I did the 9. I did some collaborations as well. So that made it a lot easier when I was working with other people. We all wrote chapters. But now I've moved into the last 4 years writing what I call back pocket guides. They're small books, videos in, exits. They can read the book, get excited, click the button, book a call. It's almost like a mini funnel in a book. And, hand in hand with them and podcasting is basically, they both generate 6 figures every year just from doing that. So once I got the 9 done, I pretty well got lazy. I didn't really feel like writing bigger books, but every time there was something new that I needed to put out there, there is power still in having a book, even though, it's probably been diluted that little bit. But the reason to have a book is most people don't. And that's
True.
the thing. Is like, if you publish a book, then you're probably one of the top 5%ers that have actually written and published. If you get to a bestseller status, even though it's, with all the marketing and everything that you can do, it's a little easier. But out of that, most people still don't even do that or get there. So whenever you are introduced as a best-selling author, it still carries a bit of weight.
Well, yeah, you bet. Pete, however many other books there were on there, and I imagine 2, 3, and 5 are probably doing the same marketing and trying to do the same promotion. They are putting something behind it. Otherwise, well, that would be very impressive if I'll just write a book and then it just goes off and basically launches by itself.
No matter what, it takes a lot of effort. And even though that people are using different AI tools to assist them, you've still got to be the person that pushes the buttons. And it still really does have to be your ideas. And what we work with people, now we're helping people write their own back pocket guides, is what's the uniqueness? What's the unique you that we can put in the book? Because all ChatGPT and the other things can do is take information from stuff that's already out there. And I used it in my last back pocket guide, and I said, well, I'm doing this, can you help me with this? And all it did was come up with all the other cookie cutter stuff that everybody else has ever said. And I said, well, no, I write it a different way. I use my own language. I talk about the emotive sales pendulum, the brown box syndrome, and all of these little things that nobody's ever written about. It can't do it because it's not out there. So when you actually put your unique spin and create your unique language, you stand out far above anybody else.
Yeah, on the note of AI, I've lately been thinking about it, and it's not that it doesn't change or completely erupt the creative game. It's the same game, it's just on a different field. That's all it is, because you're still gonna give it their ideas, your ideas, and then it can help you put words on it, and then you can go in and correct them later. For example, for me, if I have something to go off, it's a lot easier to write something brilliant. The blank page is the hard stuff, and it can help you in that extent. But you still got to be creative and tell it what you actually want to talk about. Otherwise, you're just going to be copy pasting everybody else as you're saying. But I want to
just on that, let's just quickly dive into that. Once was a time when you had something to do. You went to the library and researched other people's books.
Yeah.
Was that cheating?
No.
Then that thing called the web came on, and then you had to go and research other people's websites and other people's information. Was that cheating? No. All you're doing is just using a tool to go and do the research that you could have done 100 years ago by going to the library. And that's all it's doing. And then it is rewriting it for you. But I used to say there was one AI that beat the other AI. AI as in authentic interactions, beat just standard AI. You still need to have authentic interactions. And now I use AI for the other AI, which is active inspiration. Hey, give me some ideas on this. Oh, didn't think of that. And then I'd run off down my own tangent. So that's my own personal take on AI.
Yeah. I'm very similar in the way I look at it. It doesn't change things that much. It's just like the library was a field, and the internet came, AI came. There's many of the iterations of it. It's basically just the same story being retold with different words. But if you look at the wider context of everything, same thing. No need to panic.
Sure.
But I want to make sure we also get like time to actually talk about podcasting, because as you mentioned, you generate 6 figures from podcast appearances, being guests on podcasts. And a lot of the people that I talk to, they love podcasting because it's a good time. You get to have good conversations, and making 6 figures from that, well, to me, sounds pretty convincing. I'm pretty sure to the audience listening, it sounds pretty convincing. So what does that actually look like?
Yes. This and thanks. We've allowed some great time for this, and I'm sure many of the listeners that you have right now listen to you, and they get on, or they want to get on a podcast. They've got something to say. So here's the first paradigm shift that we'll talk about. And if you've got some really cool listeners at home, in the next few minutes, I'll probably throw a fire hose of information at you. It may feel as if I'm standing on a soapbox, but if you can take this away and shift your mindset, it will really help you. Now, the first thing is, as we had our first discussion, the host is a business owner first and has a business. And generally they run a podcast to get interesting people on, to expand their audience and get in front of more people. The guest is a business owner first and wants to get on podcasts to grow their business. Yet how come 90+% of all the conversations that ever happen between the two of them are host to guest? How can you have the business owner to business owner discussion? Now, we had a discussion about some stuff that we're going to do about promoting some stuff that I've had. So we had our business owner to business owner, but we also worked out on what we're going to have here. So a lot of the work that I teach people to do is how to shift and move the conversation, which both people want but don't really know how to do it, is, well, how can we both get together to enhance each other's business? And a lot of people look at podcasts and they select, well, am I going to go on that one? Am I going to go and seek to get on that one because they've got a big audience, versus is it going to be a profitable? Now, I teach, and we've got courses coming up and some training coming up that we're going to invite your audience to. Now, we teach how to select a good podcast is select the audience first. In a way, which audience can I add the most value to? Who are the people that are listening, and how can I add value to that audience? Now, if it's just 10,000 people on Joe Rogan's, and one person out of that 10,000 would actually buy from me or want anything from me, what's the point of getting on Joe Rogan's? It's nice to say, it'll elevate your status, but you probably won't sell a damn thing. But if you have an audience where you can add value to, and you say, oh, hey, listen, here's some tips for you. Exactly. Here's how somebody else has used it. And then it's like, wow, they're the right people. Then, okay, who has those as an audience? And then you look at the host. And is that host somebody that I could work with? Do they have the right business? Do they have the right mindset, collaboration? Or are they just going to be a blast things out type of things? And a lot of people think that you got to get on big podcasts. And here's one quick example. I had one lady come to me, and I treat everybody with utmost respect. She said, Steve, I love what you're saying. I'd love you to come on my podcast, but it's not that big. I don't get any more than 100 downloads to any particular episode. And I said, okay, let's have a look at who you are, your audience. And so we had a chat. And then she said, oh, Steve, let's do the episode. But I think that I've got this other community of people that you can do an event for them that would be really good. And I said, sure. And that's one of the things that I like to do is run masterclasses, events, etc. So within a 6-month period, that person that had no more than ever 100 people ever watching her podcast generated me over $16,000. We ran the event. She was an affiliate. She made some money. We helped her people. And it's like, wow. So what most people think of as the actual episode is the destination. Hey, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to answer some great questions. And then I'm going to give away a free gift of some description and then hope like crazy somebody connects me. But we teach people, and if your audience at home is ready, here's the 4 Ps. Ready. So if you get on a podcast, quite often you'll want to do your best, answer some questions, and then P. Somebody might purchase from you. And normally that doesn't happen. They might think something is great, will follow you down the funnel, and if you've got a really good funnel, one day they might purchase. Then there's pass on, which is refer, but it didn't start with a P, so I call it pass on. But the only way that somebody's going to refer you is if you are desirable and memorable. And if you are there was a good therapist on here, there was a good coach on here, I know a good, so I'm not going to go and listen. You have to be memorable and be unique. Otherwise, that pass on doesn't work either. So that needs 2 things to work on. But then there's the you and me effect. It's the promote or partner. Now, we've got some things cooking up where you're going to be promoting some stuff of mine. I'll be promoting some stuff of yours. So we're going to be looking at doing some business owner to business owner collaborations, which is fantastic, or partner. And I've had one host, no, not one, there's 4 hosts that I've worked with. They said, Steve, I've got this group of people. One was a speaker trainer. We were talking about sales training. I love what you're talking about, sales training. How can we incorporate your stuff into mine so that when they buy mine, they get yours? So we have a deal. We're partnering. So when somebody goes to have a pre-chat conversation, they walk into the door and say, well, how can I add value to your people? Here are some things that they're going to get. They're going to be able to implement. They are going to be able to get results from, not, hey, I can talk about this. No, I'm going to give your people tips. Like I've given your people 4 key tips and hopefully some others on how they can change the results that they get. And that's fantastic. How can we work together now to create something else? So one of my girls from the training, she actually made $12,000 working with the host before the episode was even recorded. It's like, wow, we should do some stuff together. Yeah, let's do this. Great. So if you're going to write this last one thing down out of this little segment here, the podcast is the doorway to open opportunities, not the destination.
Great quote, I must say.
And when you turn it around that way, we can do. So I'm just going to jump back down off my soapbox and join you in the ring. But I hope that's been valuable for your audience.
I imagine so. Otherwise, they weren't listening. And since it was a fire hose of information and there is a lot to remember, there is a link down below of an event Steve is doing tomorrow. And if you're not watching this on the day of release, if I'm correct, there is able to replay it the next 14 days, including with other of Steven's links. But we'll get down to what specifically is down there later on. I just want to make sure that we got that in
perfect. There. Yeah. If you think that's a fire hose, imagine you'll probably run out of either 4 pencils or 3 pens and 5 pads of paper, taking notes in at least 80 minutes of fire hose training. And it's going to be real exciting to have a lot of your people along. So let's get back to the script, buddy.
Well, if you are running out of pens, a quick tip: just screen record it, get the transcript from somewhere, and then you have all the notes you need. That's what I do sometimes, because if I take notes, I forget to listen. Like, what did this actually mean? And I'm not the best writer, so I look back at my notes and I'm like, what did I write there? I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. That's not a real word, and it's not close to any ones I can think of. I don't know what I had in mind actually when I wrote that, but I had something and must have been smart. Yeah, it's lost forever at this point. But one of the things to actually also get on a podcast, tell a good story, and actually get people to follow along is also being good on camera, being good with the microphone, all of that stuff, and knowing what to say. Because if you have the best story ever, the best, provide the most value ever, but you're the driest person in the world, you're not going to do very well. So what is some of the things you do? And feel free to use examples from this episode, since everybody would have seen it at this point, to actually perform good when you come on a podcast.
Yeah, look, I've been fortunate to speak around the world live to over 65,000 people. And in those times, people would come up and say, "Oh, Steve, you're a born speaker. You're a born this." I was not. I was the worst. I could not even read in public as a kid. Could not read. Went through a number of embarrassing things. And even though I was a sports jock and played sport over lunchtime, I gave up and I joined the debating team and hung out with nerds. Sorry, anybody into debating, but for me, they were back then. A high school kid that's a sports jock going and joining the debating team. And I spent 2 years doing it because somewhere back then I knew I had to get this right. My life would not be the same if I couldn't speak in public. And then one thing led to another, and I forced myself into situations to get better and get better. My first foray into TV, I'd been teaching aerobics, getting up in front of people, teaching kids classes, 500 or 600 kids at a time. And I had a kids segment on a TV show. And it was me and these 3 big cameras, and I had kids behind me. I had the furry character that was there. And I thought they were going to tell me to, "Hey, Steve, tone it down. That's a little bit over the top." And I thought I did my segment and went up to the edit suite where they were pulling it together. And I looked down and I thought, damn, that's boring. What I was doing on one side of the camera didn't come through. And week after week after week, every week for 2 years, I would do my bit and I would hang around the studio and I would learn. I would look at what I was doing. I was looking at what they were doing. And I realized that little black hole called the camera, it's got more shipwrecks than the Bermuda Triangle. It sucks the life out of you. It sucks the energy out of you. So I came up with, following some research that Navy SEALs did. They actually stuck goggles on that turned the world upside down. And they were running around bumping into things until around about the 40, 45 minute mark, within 3 or 4 minutes of each other, the brain switched it back. The brain said, "No, this is not right. I'm going to turn it around." And here's something that I'm giving your audience that has been life-changing for so many people. Most people say speaking to an audience, the fear of the camera, it's all psychological. Well, it's actually not the fear of the camera. The camera can't hurt you unless somebody's a really good shot and throws it at you. It can't hurt you. It's the fear of watching it back. So most people are shooting, looking at the camera, thinking that's looking at me, and sooner or later I've got to look at it. It's physiological, not psychological. All day long, whenever we look at ourselves in a mirror or glass walking past or whatever, we see ourselves as a mirror image. The brain thinks it's a mirror image. So when we see ourselves back through camera, no matter how good your self-esteem is, the brain is saying, "I don't like that. That's back to front. That should be over there. That should be over there. I don't like it." So following the same formula, we teach a 3x5x5, shoot a 3-minute video, and then watch it 5 times. Not once, 5. And you think, "Oh, I could do that a little bit better. I could change this. I could do this." And you still don't like yourself the first time round. The brain is saying, "Nope, still back to front. Don't like you." And then you shoot another one, same 3-minute video, and then you watch that. And when you get to around the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, the brain is saying, "I get it. That's me." And not only do I look okay and I believe that's me, I sound, because sound's a compression wave. And it travels differently from inside to the outside and through. So what we're hearing back is not distorted. It's the exact same sound. And by the time you get to around about the 30 or 40 minute mark, it switches. And once you get over, "Oh, that's not me," to, "Yeah, now I know how to get through the camera," because on the 5th time you are doing things that you never would have thought of. I had one guy who's in real estate last week, and I gave him this. He said, "Steve, I want to do videos, but I'm just not good." And I said, "You look fine, you sound fine, you're good to me." "Oh yeah, but I hate myself on camera." "Do this." And he said to me, He said, I got halfway through this and I'm like, what the hell is Steve talking about? It's just, and then he got to that breakthrough point. He said, I got to the end of it and I just wanted to switch the camera on and I wanted to do live streams and I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. So that one thing, that one 3x5x5 has just transitioned so many people to be able to be confident. And the last thing is, there's a great way to cheat. You can have sticky notes.
People
Add
can't
one
see
girl,
you.
and they've gone through the training, they've learnt the framework, they've learnt the storytelling framework, and they've done all of that, and they've put sticky notes under the camera over here to remind them. And one in her second ever podcast interview, the host said, wow, that was such a fantastic interview. You are great at this. Would you like to do a series with me?
Because that's a good compliment.
Yeah, she had the framework stuck around and she could stick to it. It's like bowling with the bumpers up. You let that ball rip when you know you're not going to go down the gutters. And if you've got all these little sticky notes to stick to, it's fantastic. You can, I just see so many people transition from scared to being, almost podcasting hero when they've got something to follow.
It's funny how the simplest things can make you so much better. And for all the listeners that's thinking to themselves, yeah, I don't want to record myself still after hearing what Steve said, you're the one that needs to do it the most. Because I used to be very, what's the word for it if we just have a thing? I didn't really like how I looked. I didn't like how I sounded. Still don't really like how I sound. I can't quite get with it. I'm okay with it nowadays. But actually doing videos made me a lot more confident because it made me used to who I am, seeing myself. And once you've done it enough times, even though you might not enjoy hearing yourself or seeing yourself, you're like, oh, you ain't that bad. And also, I've been told I have a good voice. I still don't know if I quite agree with it. It's okay. It just sounds a lot better down here compared to when listening back to it. At least to me. So I always, and I related to the story of, maybe we did it, or was that enough with the whole news thing? Because every time I watch something back of myself, I think, yeah, I gave it enough. I'm like, I should have gave it some more. I've never had that where like I was doing too much. Haven't happened yet because it sucks the life out.
Yeah, fantastic. And they're great points. And there are so many people that go through that exact same thing. And quite often I'll look at a video that I've done and I'm still waiting to do my perfect video. So anybody at home thinks, that could have been better here and I forgot to say that. You're the only one that knows that you forgot to say something. I've coached people to speak on stages and there's one word that's banned. Sorry. It's like nobody knows that you left something out. Nobody knows that you didn't stick to what you were going to say. It's all about, and here's another thing that you can write down if they haven't guessed it by now, that I do like alliteration. It is your personality and passion, not perfection, that produces profits.
Yes. If you're
it's
perfect,
your energy that attracts the people to you. And it's your energy. And you don't have to be the high bouncy person. You just have to be you. And coming through the camera, you just have to be a little bit more of you. And people say, but I'm a bit shy. That's okay. Use that. But also, if you're shy, that you might be that little bit softer. You might sound a little bit more empathetic, a bit more understanding. So use whatever your personality is, identify what it is. And then when you do the 3x5x5, work out what is it that you want to get through the lens. Here's one last little tip before we start wrapping up. Use the lens as a telescope into the life of the person, the one person that you're speaking to. You might want to talk to millions, but they're not all in the same room sitting on each other's knee watching it. So you're talking to that one person. And when you look through the lens to that person, your focal length changes and the way that you look at it, you communicate through the eyes. And how do you get through that lens? And it's not all about presenting at the lens. It's no, talk to me. And that's the big thing. And learn to talk to the lens, not to yourself over here, not to the host that's here, but talk to the audience that's here.
That's why I like to have my questions just under my camera lens. So my eyes naturally goes at least somewhere in the right direction. Not a just quick tip before we get Steve to wrap this episode off where you can contact him. Good tip I got. Don't look at the lens, actually look through it. Find somewhere behind it and look straight through it, because that's where your audience is. They're somewhere behind that lens. So Steve, of course, there's the link down below for your masterclass. But for the person that's going to watch this episode in 6 months, a year from now, what would be a good logical next step to reach you, to learn more about what you do, becoming a better podcast guest?
There's two things, and I'm pretty old school. I will reply to any email that people send me, so it's nice and easy. You'll have seen my name floating around here somewhere. It's steve@stevebrossman.com, and just say, hey, you came from this podcast, heard this, would love to connect, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And it's exactly the same, Steve Brossman. I'm on LinkedIn, and just reach out, connect, and I'll let you know of anything that I've got coming up. If there's something that I could assist you with, I've got lots of different free resources. We talked about back pocket guides. If you contact me, I can always send one of those over. So that's the easiest way. And what you can be guaranteed is whatever the next step is, they're going to be able to implement pretty well straight away. So if I send you over one of my back pocket guides, or you connect with me on LinkedIn, there's going to be some stuff there that I could help you with that would help you get out to more people and be able to get and I talk about ROE, return on effort, and get a good return on effort for your business and your podcasting.
I'm going to start using that if you don't mind. And for the people, that's @betterspelling at me. Email and LinkedIn are going to be down below, so don't worry about how it's spelled. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on the Business Library, Steve. I had an absolutely wonderful time talking with you today, and I hope the audience did as well.
Mate, I've had an absolutely brilliant time. And for those of you that I get to see tomorrow, if you've watched this live when it's posted, and tomorrow, we've got an absolute plethora of information that not only helps you in podcasting, but you can transfer it into your whole business, your networking, your referrals. So, and that's the reason that we got together, because you genuinely care about your people on the whole landscape of helping their business. And I just got to thank you for you doing what you do. And it's been a blast getting on here and talking with you.
I appreciate it, Steve.